In this video, I'm going to explain how I balance this with that. Weightlifting and running. Many people consider these things to be diametrically opposed, but I'm going to be showing how I can incorporate it into my routine. So first and foremost, I'm going to introduce the subject. Now, many people that are newer to the gym may find that the question that balancing weightlifting and running, surely these things should just go hand in hand. Exercise is exercise. Surely doing both is beneficial. Now, this is where one of the biggest memes in the entire fitness industry comes about. Cardio kills gains. Now, the origin of this it's pretty old, this theory, but it first kind of came about based on a study that came around a couple of decades ago. Now, in this study, they got a couple of trained men and they put them on strength training and a running routine, and they found that the combination made them perform worse at both, and they took a lot of hits in their strength training. Now, what this study did actually fail to mention, though, and what many people forget, is the study took these men and put them on 5 days a week strength training with 6 days a week high intensity cardio. Now, unless you've got unlimited funds and unlimited time, that's probably not going to be what you'll be doing in the gym. It's something that's not going to be sustainable for the majority of the population, and is maybe an example of overtraining just in general. Never mind being something that can be taken as evidence that weightlifting and running are diametrically opposed. A lot of the reasons that this meme has stayed around in the kind of collective consciousness of lifters is because people very early noticed these findings and conflated it with, well, runners look like this and weightlifters and bodybuilders look like this. So if we train running, surely we take ourselves to be looking more like this, and we take ourselves further away from looking like this. This is just categorically untrue. Later studies have found that there is kind of no effect, really, if you balance it correctly. But let me explain why. For the last 3 months, I have been incorporating a little bit of running into my routine, and I've found when it comes to doing higher rep sets, I find that my work capacity has been a lot better. I've currently been in the hypertrophy phase of training, basically trying to just bring up my overall musculature so that I can be better at my strength performance. And when I've been hitting these sets of 12s, 15s, I found that I'm much better at hanging with the work. I found that during this time, my limiting factor for the last while, probably longer than I care to admit, has not been strength potential. It has been my cardio. I've just not been able to breathe. That's what stopped me. So when I take these sets, I can take them much further and I can actually begin to stimulate the muscle. I especially found this in my legs. Usually on sets of legs, I have just been stopping when I can't breathe rather than stopping when my legs tell me to stop. I used to think that I was some sort of special snowflake when it came to training, that I was just really good at low rep sets. It's just what my genetics called for, and when it came to higher reps, I just wasn't built like that. I'm a super fast twitch muscle fibre haver. But through this, I've just exposed that it was just a matter of work capacity. I had none. So how do I mix my weightlifting and my running in a practical approach? Well, here is the baseline explanation. Polarized training. In running, there is 3 thresholds. You have your zone 1 work. Now, zone 1 is basically the running equivalent of RPE6. It is pretty easy. You should be able to hold a conversation whilst you're running. It shouldn't be too taxing. For this one, you're more just kind of clocking in miles than you are trying to achieve speed. Zone 2. Now, Zone 2 is probably what most people are familiar with. This is actually the running that most people end up doing. If you're someone that comes to the gym and you try and batter out the fastest 5k you can, this is probably Zone 2 training. This is the one that most people spend their time on the treadmill week after week, just trying to grind out, maybe just taking 10 seconds off their best 5k time. Zone 3. Zone 3 is what sprinters are doing. This is usually your fastest threshold of work. It's where you push the intensity as high as possible and you try and hit maximum speeds over a short amount of distance. Now what I find is actually Zone 2 work is your most fatiguing, and it's the one that you would probably find hardest to balance in your routine. So this is where polarised training comes about. With polarised training, rather than spending the majority of your time in Zone 2, we actually spend our time mostly in Zone 1 and we incorporate a little bit of Zone 3. So we're just clocking in miles at a slower pace, a more manageable intensity, and then we test our speed with our Zone 3 work, whilst just avoiding Zone 2 almost entirely. I find this to be the most useful strategy of incorporating running and weightlifting. I spend most of my time in Zone 1. It doesn't affect my workouts. I usually would structure a week like this. So I'd have a weightlifting session, and the day after I'll maybe do some Zone 1 intensity. Now, to be honest with you, as long as you make sure that you get a little bit of protein, get a little bit of carbs after your weightlifting workout, I wouldn't even mind going from weights and Zone 1 cardio. I don't think it's taxed my performance and my recovery, and I'm still able to hit my Zone 1 threshold. The only problem would be if you were to run the cardio before the weightlifting. This usually just leads to you being too taxed when it comes to your breathing, like I spoke about, and it diminishes your work capacity a little bit. Now, for the Zone 3 work, I would usually keep this to a separate day. I wouldn't recommend just tacking this on afterwards. I think it's good to have a bit of recovery and to space it apart from your weightlifting days. But as you can see, the majority of the work should come from Zone 1, your weightlifting, and then you can put a little bit of Zone 3 in there, whilst completely avoiding Zone 2. This just allows me to improve my cardio, improve my running, without seeing any negative effects on my weightlifting. So this gets us onto the topic of why do it, why mix them, why risk your gains like that. You know, you said it yourself, I've said it myself, it could potentially go over, you have to be careful and you have to do this balancing act, and why would you want to do it? I think the point comes from wanting to be just generally useful in life. A lot of people talk about the advantages of strength and how it affects your life and how it's so much better. And I usually hear this off of powerlifters, but it goes the same for running. You know, if you can be strong but you're not fast, you're not able to run, you know, you could get yourself into a situation in which that's something that's required of you, and although you spend all this time in the gym, you've just become completely useless. If your girlfriend's purse gets snatched, or you find yourself even in the more likely everyday situations, when it comes to helping your friend move house and you're the gym guy and you can't keep up with everyone else, you are going to get such a slagging. You know, if you're known as the strong guy and you're trying to just get through these everyday tasks, and all you've been used to is going into the gym and doing your 3 sets of 5 with your speciality bars and your calibrated plates, you're going to find everyday tasks just as hard as the average Joe, but you're going to get way more flack for it because you spend so much time in the gym, because you spend time building your muscle, because you're the big guy. It's not going to be a good look for you, because when it comes to lifting these kind of awkward things, you find that you're doing it probably for much longer than you would in a set, and your cardio is going to be tested in a way that you're not going to be tested in a squat rack. As a lifter, you categorically do not want to be shown up by the normies. So the question is, has cardio killed my gains? And what I want to say about that is, does it really matter? What are you training for? I know so many power lifters that will never step on the platform. So many bodybuilders that are not going to step on the stage. You've got to kind of keep in mind, why do you lift? You don't need to put yourself into one of these boxes because it's what you see on the internet. Most people that do put themselves in these boxes will never actually compete in the thing that they identify with. It's much better to lift to be more useful and to find your kind of own reason behind it. You might want to pursue strength and you might want to pursue size. That's a respectable endeavour. But it's also to keep in mind that you're probably not in that 0.1% of lifters that needs to be super specialised. Even if you do compete, unless you're in the very top level where, you know, being out with the pocket, being out with the super specialised training is going to cost you a gold medal or an IPF world record or an IFBB Pro bodybuilding card. You don't need to really care about the optimal routine. Optimal in the end is the enemy of good. If you look for the optimal program, the optimal training protocol, you'll often miss the forest for looking at the trees. So no, it hasn't killed my gains. And to be honest, I think I'm all the better for it. And what we want to keep in mind for life is health. With your body, you only get one. So it's good to keep it strong, and it's good to keep it healthy. So if it's something that's interested you, or if it's something that scares you, I think that this is your sign to try and take it up, try and balance it out, look at some of the ways that I've told you can set it up, and see where it takes you.